I'm Melissa Shanahan, and this is the Law Firm Owner Podcast, episode number 225. Welcome to the Law Firm Owner Podcast, powered by Velocity Work, for owners who want to grow a firm that gives them the life they want. Get crystal clear on where you're going, take planning seriously, and honor your plan like a pro. This is the work that creates velocity. All right, welcome everyone to this week's episode of the Law Firm Owner Podcast. I am lucky to have a special guest on today, Wouter from DecisionVault.
Yes, that's right.
Welcome. I did ask him how to pronounce his last name, and he said it beautifully, but we decided to just go with Wouter from DecisionVault. Will you say it for everyone?
My full name is Wouter IJgosse.
There we go. Awesome. Yeah. So I met you recently. We were both present for something for Molly McGrath, and listeners are probably familiar with Molly McGrath of Hiring and Empowering. We met briefly. I heard a little bit about what you do, and I thought, okay, I would love to have him on the podcast because I think that a lot of people could benefit from knowing about your product. And so thanks for coming on. And I would love to start with you giving listeners an idea of your background and how DecisionVault came to be.
Sure. Yeah. So the two-line headline is like DecisionVault is an intake portal, right? It helps you gather info from your clients. And on the back end, we integrate with as many tools as we can in the legal tech space to kind of push that information over so you don't have to retype it. So it helps transfer information. And the way that it came to be, or what initially got me into this, is that my wife is an estate planning attorney. And in the beginning of 2020, she had a matter in her practice where a client wants to nominate 37 beneficiaries. And obviously, like, clients can do that, right? And then we'll draft an estate plan for them. Okay. But the way that my wife was operating her practice at the time made it that it was quite a bit of work to get that all done, because she had to, she was using a fillable PDF. The client had filled that in. Then there came a design meeting where more names came up, and then there came emails back and forth to follow. So when it was time to go draft this plan, she had to couple all that together and find it again in her inbox, in her notes, type it all into her draft platform to enter all these contacts, and then she could generate these documents. And that kind of was the instigating incident where she asked, hey, is there something that can help here? And I initially went into that looking for there's lots of these tools out there. Can I find one off the shelf that can just do this to gather info from a client in a digital format and then just sync it on? And what I found was that I couldn't really make it work end to end. Yes, every tool has intake forms, and you typically can gather some information that way. And some of the tools integrate with some of the other tools, so you can push some things over. But when you try to do it end to end, so it's I send an intake form, I get the stuff in, and I push it over to my different tools, you find out there's lots of gaps and it doesn't really work. So that kind of prompted me to start looking into this and see hey, what can be done, or how should we do it differently to make it work and to get the data into these different tools at the touch of a button.
Yeah. Okay. What's your background that made you qualified to even understand what you're looking at and to build?
I would call myself a product manager, but I also could develop enough to be dangerous. So that kind of combined background, including then having an estate planning attorney for wife, gave me all the ingredients.
Yeah, absolutely. When did you start DecisionVault?
So I started writing the code in the middle of COVID. It was a nice COVID project. So July 2020, kind of went live with it with the first couple of users in January of 2021.
Okay. And you've grown quite a bit since then, I know.
Yes.
I saw when I was looking up your site that you mentioned specifically estate planning attorneys, but say more about who likely would be a great fit for DecisionVault.
Yeah, so estate planning attorneys, we're slowly getting into some other areas, right?
Okay.
So maybe an estate planner is pairing up with a business attorney or doing some real estate, or maybe a little bit into family law. So I think there's there's other areas that the tool potentially can help with. So the tool is really good at gathering all the contacts, all the financials, and then asking other questions on top, right? If you need to. But you could look at it and say like, hey, but why do I need DecisionVault? Because like my CRM does this, right? Like Clio has an intake form. Sure. But there's a couple different things. Like when you try to automate your intake more, there's a couple things you're going to run into. So the first is that like with these other intake tools, typically it really is a form. You send the link, the client can fill it in, they submit it to you, and then that's it. Like there's never any like, oh, and now we reopen it, or now we add more info. Just like that example of the matter that my wife did is like, you don't get all the stuff up front. Like some of it, you'll sit down with the client for the design meeting and 4 other names come up. Like, how are you going to capture information on those 4 names? Like, there's no good way to like gather that. And that means that kind of it like falls in an email and then you'll have to dig that out of the email again when it's time to do drafting, right? So that's why DecisionVault works like a portal where the client has an account, they can log back in over time until, of course, you want to lock them out because now like we don't want to have them make changes the morning of the signing. So like, that's the first thing is like the overtime component is what will be a problem if you're trying to do this with intake forms. And another thing is like the financials, right? So like, how do you do financial intake? Well, if you try that in other form tools, you're going to ask the client to like type in the following text box, all your different bank account details. And then there's no way to kind of at a glance see whether this person has like a taxable estate or like how much they own in each category. And also if you wanted to use the info, if you want to build funding instructions or like an overview of their assets, it's going to take you or your staff a ton of time to like copy paste it all together. It's like, well, like we've solved that. You push a button, you get a nice looking Excel sheet. So like there's some specific things that we've solved. Like if you are just trying to get a lead captured from your website with the name, email, and a phone number, great. Use a simple form. That's fine. If you are trying to do things with lots of like conditional logic, like the whole logic tree of like employment law, that's not the best with DecisionVault. But if we're trying to get a sense of like, hey, John and Mary Smith, their whole family, their friends, their relatives, like their assets, their income, other questions, and some indication of who might be like, hey, we have these questions on the stock DecisionVault estate planning questionnaire that say things like, if you were to become incapacitated, who would help you with medical decisions? Like we're asking for a medical power of attorney, but like the client probably doesn't know what those words mean. So we're just asking it a client-friendly way, and they can select people from a drop down. So like it's very geared today, like gathering all the context, gathering all the assets and financial info. So like estate planning works very well. Yeah.
That's great. How much time I think it depends on what tool someone is currently using, but I'm wondering how much time do you think over the course of the matter it could save an attorney or a firm?
Probably at least an hour to 2 hours, just in like, if you have 15 contacts that you want to enter into your draft platform, like you have to create each contact, you have to add all the data in, and then you have to go through them again to make sure you did it correctly, right? Some folks tell me that like creating a nice looking asset sheet takes them like 2 hours as well. Like, yeah, no, that doesn't take 2 hours anymore. So it definitely is like at least an hour, probably 2. And if you do like the creation of these other documents like asset overviews, then it saves even more time. And then like that's why we've kind of been pushing to make and to connect with as many tools as we can, right? So like on the drafting side, we integrate directly into Interactive Legal. We're an official Wealth Counsel integration partner, so we sync the information to Wealth Counsel contacts, that is. On like the CRM side, we support all the usual suspects, Clio, Locus, Lomatics, ActionStep, in my case. And then we, in the end of last year, we kind of added another category of integrations with several document automation tools. So Gavel, Woodpecker, FormStack. So that's would be for some folks have their own version of like ancillary documents. Like I like my own power of attorney form and not the one that comes out of Interactive Legal. Or they have documents like an instruction for caregivers, right? So like a list of like the short-term guardians that you could like assign roles in DecisionVault like have it pushed over into your document automation tool where it fills in a template, and then you can print that, and that can become part of the client's plan. They can hand it to the kids' school, right? Like if something happened, like call these people in this order. We have all the data. So now it's about getting it into the other systems in the right way so you can like use it for more than one purpose, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I was just doing the math. If you said 1 to 2 hours per matter, so let's just say 1.5, then if you're a smaller firm who's doing 10 new matters a month, that's 15 hours of work a month that it would save your firm. So maybe some of it is attorney time, maybe some of it is support time, but it doesn't matter. It's like 15 hours. It doesn't need to be spent anymore. And that's that's 10 new matters a month. So if you had 20 new matters a month, that's 30 hours. That's almost a full work week of work. I mean, I guess it's 75% of a work week, but it adds up. It's crazy how just efficiency, how much it matters when you start to really dig in and look at it. I am curious, you were mentioning there's so many other softwares that you integrate with, and you just listed a bunch of them and they're all on your site. I saw them on your site. Let's say there is an estate planning attorney and they are interested in using DecisionVault. Is there a set of tools that they could be using that kind of makes DecisionVault not worth it? Or that's not the case? Like DecisionVault can still be useful even if they're not using some of the usual suspects, as you say.
I don't know. Some are bigger and more known, right? So others that make it less useful. So I think in the estate planning space, there aren't really any that you then would like just plug and play in place, right? Or like where I've seen this a little bit when I did research into like the bankruptcy space or into like immigration. I think there what you'll see is that there are tools that kind of all go together. So like they have a questionnaire which then feeds like the calculations or like whatever needs to happen with the data, and they spit out the court forms for like immigration, right? So like if you have that, I don't think that it makes much sense to then like try to squeeze DecisionVault into there. I think there's something similar in like the bankruptcy space. Maybe there's some family law tools that do similar things. I'm not so sure. So family law, we're slowly getting into and getting some feedback on. In the estate planning space, it really is a little bit different because people kind of like pick the CRM they like, and then they pick the draft platform they like, which part is like usually due to like, I like how it works. But when it comes to like the documents, people have opinions on like, oh, Wealth Counsel's documents are too long, or ILS is better, or like Wealth Counsel is better. Differences also on content versus just the technology, right? Like if you're looking for document automation, maybe you'd prefer Gavel over Woodpecker just in like functionality space. But like when it's about these draft platforms, people have a preference on what the documents look like that come out. So like, yeah, in the estate planning space, there isn't really one where you would like can just do it. Clio comes the closest in that, like, yes, if you have contacts sitting in your Clio account, you could sync those over to ILS and to Wealth Counsel. However, the Clio intake forms are suffering from some of the problems I just highlighted on like doing financial intake, doing it over time, and also just in general, like capturing lots of contacts, right? Like Clio specifically, you have to, when you're building the questionnaire, which is, by the way, one long running thing, which is like terrible for estate planning because people will get overwhelmed. I joke that you have to pick how many children your client has, right? Because like when you put 5 questions, they can add 5 children, but that's it. Like no 6 children. Like that's on the children's side. But the same thing is for like other relationships, right? In DecisionVault, we can keep adding them and keep track of like, oh, this is Bob is the uncle of John, and then Sally is like the niece of John, and like we have these relationships as well. So like that makes it that you can capture more and more context, and that's what I was talking about earlier. When you try to kind of do it end to end in a client friendly way, it starts to break down when you try to do it with these forms.
Yeah, this is so cool. I bet there's a lot of people that are really glad you decided to start this company.
Yes.
I do have a couple questions about a lot of the stuff that we focus on in velocity work is definitely nuts and boltsy and data driven and all of that. But if you are willing to entertain, I do have some questions just about how you've thought about as an owner, like you're an owner of a company, and how you have thought about your own growth and your own stuff. So as you lifted this company off the ground, I'm thinking of all the listeners out there that are also lifting their firm off the ground. Like maybe they don't quite have a viable business, but they're working on it and they're going to have one really soon. What were some of the things that helped you the most dial in, sort of prove out that like, okay, this is going to work. Now I have revenue coming in.
Yeah, so like I mentioned, my background is like I'm a product manager by like the 10 years before this of building and improving like digital products mostly, right? Software. But it's not like the techniques are not that different from what you would do to like prove out a law firm. So the things that helped, people talk about, is it the team, is it the product, or is it the market, right? Mm-hmm. And you look at like the VC space of like software startups. There's always this discussion of, oh, we had the best product. Do they enter a good market, or like is it the team doing it? And like between those, I think that like, yeah, the team, sure, that's sort of baseline. Product, you don't really know what the product's going, like an amazing product that doesn't have a market doesn't like connect, so there's nothing there. So it's really about the market, right? So like in this case, I came across this from talking to my wife, from talking to then some of her estate planning friends, and like starting to get an understanding of like, if we're trying to solve this thing, like what is hard, what can be done, what if they tried before? And then like I could start to like not go, okay, I'll go away for 6 months and try to build some things. Like, no, I'll like mock up something and then try to put it in front of them. Now, obviously with a law firm, that's a little bit differently because like you do like need the technical chops to know what you're talking about. So there, I think when it's about starting a law firm, it's a little bit more about finding those clients or finding those initial set of clients, right? So I think that's the part that's comparable. Is like the initial set of clients from doing it once or twice. Like you'll learn so much more than from trying to like plan how the first 100 are going to work. Right.
Yes.
So like with DecisionVault, with software, like I'm always really hesitant of like, well, now I know it a lot better of like what to build, how to build, and because I'm bolting stuff onto this existing thing. But in the beginning, like greenfield is really hard to build something greenfield. The engineering guys like it because like I don't have to deal with legacy stuff, but like the product manager is really hard because it's really easy to build the wrong thing. Right.
Yeah. What you're getting into, I had a hunch this was going to be along the lines of how you answered. And I feel like it's really important for people to think about. And you've done it with this company. Right. So yeah, please keep going. Like, how did you figure out as a product manager what to have them build?
Well, the one advantage is I built the whole thing. So like that made it like a lot easier because I didn't have to go have a meeting with anyone. I didn't go have to like, I did a lot of whiteboard stuff, but like it's all up in here. So the thing that I like that is underrated or easy to glance over is the like, go do it once. And then go do it again. And like by the third time, you'll start to see some patterns on like, hey, what I quoted this client and try to do smaller things, right? So like if you're a law firm owner and you're what I thought, how complex it was or how long it would take, like you're probably always off, right? So like, but if you've done a couple and you can start to see a pattern, now you can start to plan against that and say like, hey, these kind of cases, like we should filter out and not take anymore. We want more of those kind of cases. Like similar with DecisionVault, like I prototype out the sync into like Wealth Council. I prototype out like what would this look like for clients? Like that's always a question that people show up with, right? Like, will my client fill it in? And then like the thing that usually we hear from folks when they've been using it for a while is like, my clients complimented me on my intake. It's like, it's kind of the opposite way, right? It's like, instead of like, oh, clients don't want to fill this in, like, no, they tell you that they're happy that they filled this thing in because it was nice and easy to use, etc. So like, that comes from like experimentation and like trying things out and not being sort of too wedded to like, I have to write this giant plan. Well, guess what? Like the moment that the ink is dry on the plan, like that's not going to work like that because like reality doesn't really function like that. So it's more important to kind of have like the handful of things that you're focused on and try to get a couple of traction points. It's like focusing on getting those first 3 clients, even if they were the wrong cases, is more important than like trying to plan for the imaginary next 10 clients.
Yeah, I think, what's funny is if I have a consult call and they're just starting their firm or they're getting ready to, I'm like, just come back later. Like, get your business off the ground. Because people they like the idea of planning. They like the idea of there's something that feels really solid and responsible about planning. But when you're trying to lift something off the ground, you have to get in there, like roll your sleeves up, get in there, try it out. I'm using much more casual language than what you were doing, but it feels gritty, to mine the information that you need to mine in order to make the thing that your customer actually wants. And I think it's easy for law firm owners to think, well, that doesn't really apply to me because it's not quote unquote a product. This is just a legal service. But the ways in which you go about doing things, the workflows and the processes and the systems, I think people are quick to plan a bunch of that stuff out before they really have done a few or more than a few and find what does their flow need to be, what does their process need to be, and with intake in particular, right? Like I imagine that for the first few, it's not as clean when you're lifting something off the ground or, you're beginning an arm of your practice that does estate planning, for example.
Sure.
Like it's not as clean. And so I think one of the reasons I was excited to talk to you is because I think that there are listeners that are not there yet where they've lifted their firm off the ground where it would make sense for us to work together. And you just really talked through why that is, that once you have something really underneath you, then you can make solid plans and bolt things on. And as you were mentioning,
but even now, right? So like I have worked with some prior like firms, like I did some consulting over the years, etc. And like I've seen some of the, like, especially in the corporates, they're really good at this. Like, we'll just plan out these amazing PowerPoints.
Right.
And that's about the extent of it, right? Like, it's the plan, it's the PowerPoint, it's the thing that, like, it is planning for this venture as if it already has, like, 20 new cases each month, right?
Right.
And, like, when you're not there yet, it feels great to, like, have these plans. But then, like, similar to, like, in the beginning days of DecisionVault, like, I'm building this thing. My first paying subscriber was my wife. And then like the second one like signs up. So like I was excited. I was telling one of my neighbors about my 2 paying clients. And he looked at me like, what? Like, like, that's how it starts. 1, 2, 3, 5, 10.
Yes.
At some point then you're at much bigger numbers like we're now. But like it was really small at some point.
Yeah.
And that's hard, right? Because that like I'm working probably as hard as back then I was now. But like when you look at it every day, it's a very different feeling.
Yeah, I agree with everything you're saying. I think with someone, we were talking about someone lifting off the ground, but then also we have people that part of their strategic plan that they'll make is to develop an arm or a practice area that they don't yet have developed. And estate planning is probably the number one thing that people do second if they aren't already doing it first. And you make all these grand plans for something you don't have a lot of experience really working in. And it's important to pay attention to the things that you think you'll need. So all of this to sort of circle back and say, most of the people that I have the privilege of working with, they are in spots where they're really optimizing things and getting organized because they have this underneath them. They have some experience. They know what their barriers are. And without fail, at least, every single quarter, there's someone or many that decide to make a quarterly priority, which we call rocks inside of our organization and others do as well, to revamp intake or however they describe it. It's that intake needs focus and needs attention because it's one of the reasons it will hold them back from the growth that they want to see if they don't get this streamlined. So I want people to understand and know about your tool because it's a solution that they could use and spend a quarter digging in, getting it integrated. I don't know how long it takes. That's my next question coming at you. Digging in and implementing this so that they can start to feel some ease from intake forward.
So I talk about it, that it works out of the box, right? You can, when you register for a free trial, we have a 14-day free trial. It automatically generates sort of a standard outlined estate planning questionnaire. And in there, it has all the people questions. It has all a fully filled in asset intake. It has a couple of like boilerplate, welcome, and those kind of messages and other common questions that we see. It's probably a little shorter than what you really would want to do, but you could like register for a trial, take the link and send it to a client and you wouldn't look bad. Like,
wow.
It's like it works out of the box. And that would help start to speed up the intake of contacts, the intake of assets. And then it depends a little bit on what other tools you already are using or are trying out. Like then you can push a button and the contacts show up in Interactive Legal, Wealth Counsel, etc., or on the Clio side or Lawcus Lawmatics, right? So like if you're plugging this in, it'll immediately start saving time on like transferring those data points over into your draft platform. The sync to the CRMs can be used in a bunch of different ways. That's usually less critical for like, oh, I'm saving so much time, because sometimes people just want to sync like the two clients, right? They don't want all the contacts in their CRM. They just want the one or two clients. But because it syncs into the CRM, it's a little bit of an enablement technology, right? So people talk about, oh, I want to streamline my intake, but really what they're saying is like, I want to like get a better handle on the data that flows through my practice, because like some of it's written down, some of it's in an email, some of it's here and there. Like now we have this tool that it goes into and comes out of, like to my other pieces of technology. And like clients will do what clients will do, right? The client will still email you the address of some contact, but now you can open DecisionVault and take that address and put it in there, and then like archive the email. And then like when it gets synced over, it's there and it'll work, and you don't have to go find that email again. Mm-hmm. So like that's where getting started is pretty easy in that sense, that we have something that works out of the box. We don't yet have sort of a stock like probate questionnaire. We're working on it. But also if people want to try this out, if they have a current one, they can email that over to our support and we can help you set that up. So like there definitely is a little bit of somewhat of a learning curve in terms of like the tool is pretty intuitive and quick, but then some of the things work a little bit differently, right? So for instance, people, when they're using like fillable PDFs, often type ask on the PDF already. It's like, hey, who do you want to like be like the trustee to be, or the successor trustee, or the power of attorney for the husband, for the wife, position 1, 2, 3, like we do that in a slightly different way. So that sometimes takes a little bit for folks to kind of like wrap their head around why we do that. But other than that, it's pretty intuitive. And like it does a whole bunch of complex things. And like the hardest part about DecisionVault is for us to like keep adding capability into the tool, but like make it that it doesn't feel overwhelming. And like a lot of the complexity is just hidden. And like there's stuff you can configure, but it's not too overwhelming to get started with.
Yeah. Like it doesn't feel clunky, even though there's a lot of capability.
There's so much. Yeah.
Yeah. That's hard to do. That's really hard to make a simple, beautiful product when there really is a lot of complexity behind it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And we just now over the weekend, we've greatly improved the integration with 4 of our CRM partners. So Clio, Practice Panther, Lawcus, and Lawmatics. And like my case will be next, but like we had some delays there. So like what now, it used to be that you could only sync contacts over into the CRMs and that's it. But we've made it possible to basically map any of the data points from the questionnaire over into those tools in terms of like text, a number, a date, a yes, no value, or a person, right? So like in DecisionVault, we can like capture people into roles, like the attorney on the firm staff side. You can say like, oh, this is the list for the folks who are going to be the trustee or the successor trustee. And then those roles can get linked over into these custom fields in the other tools. That is getting a lot more complex. Definitely not needed from the start. But with that, it enables lots of interesting workflows in terms of like some people have like built out their fee agreements in like their legal CRM, right? And then if DecisionVault can like transfer whether or not like there's one client, 2 clients, like some of like the size of these people's like estate approximately, like you have some of those data points, and then like those like fee agreements can get fully automated, right? So like these kind of transfer and linking of information will enable. It's very fresh. So like now I need to go like record some new videos to show people how it works. Then we'll see what folks built with it. But yeah, that's the kind of stuff that we like to do. Like gather it from the client in a nice and friendly way, and then like use it anywhere.
Right. This is so neat. I did notice on your site you have demos, like videos that kind of show certain elements and what it looks like. And I think your site does a really good job of explaining the value of the product and showing That's probably a better way to say it. Not just explaining it, but showing the value of the product. So kudos to you. I'm pumped for you that this is becoming what it's becoming. And,
Yeah.
It's just the beginning in so many ways for you, I think. Do you agree?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
It just grows in capability, and then like we add more data gathering steps, and then now we've just added more like where the data can go somewhere else. So like that just keeps on raising what it can do.
Yeah.
Yep.
I hope that everyone listening really understood. I don't have that many people on to talk about a product. Very, very, very rarely. But I'm telling you, when I met you, I knew that it was like, why don't people know about this? People should know about this. They should understand that this is an option and they should look into it. It should be considered. So
if you have a more mature practice, right, and you have like 2 or 3 attorneys, and then there's like, I don't know, the total staff of like 10 or something, then like people don't really know what the possibilities might be for like plugging in a tool like this, right? And also they might not be too aware of like, oh, intake, that's not really a problem. Like one of the paralegals handles that, and like they call people, they send out the thing, and like they get it back, they enter it here, they enter it there. So the attorney in that sense wouldn't really see it, right? So like it's a little bit of a niche problem to solve, but then once some people see it, they're like, oh, like now that this becomes possible, like what else is possible? Like it enables a lot more adding automation to your practice, right? So it's not necessarily like we're not automating the practice. Like we're not like, it's not legal Zoom, right? Like where the client fills it in, you push a button, you get estate planning documents. Like that doesn't exist. But it's like adding the automation, like adding some of the enablements that then lets you like save hours on like copy pasting stuff into Excel and having a nice looking sheet. They don't really see it as a problem. Like my intake's not a problem. It takes some time. It always takes some time. Yeah, but it could be better. And also the experience for your clients could be better.
Yeah. Yeah. I will say, I do think I'm lucky in that most of the people I get to work with, just by nature of their size and the fact that they're engaging in the type of work that we do, they are forced to really evaluate what is in the way of them growing, and intake is a thing. So I'm really glad that you were willing to come on and just share. And for those of you listening, you're like, well, I'm not an estate planner. Okay, you should still know what this. You don't know what this will develop into.
And my work, due to capacity, we're not too focused right now on the other areas.
Right.
But I did, was emailing this morning with someone on like feedback on applying it to law firm where they have like some estate planning partners, and then there's also somebody doing family law. So then they're just looking to add family law in, because if a client already has an account, then they can like take one questionnaire or they do another questionnaire. So having it all in one environment is nice. So that's why people then add the different questionnaires.
But I do know we have a lot of estate planning attorneys in our community and in listenership. So hopefully this is helpful to each and every one of you. And, my whole shtick is planning every quarter, because the listeners are not brand new with their firms. And like this should be considered. What is intake looking like in your firm? And even if you don't realize there's issues with it, if somebody was going to come in and take a look at all your systems, like would intake be one that they would point to and say, you could do some things here to create some efficiencies and ease for clients, ease internally for the firm. A couple minutes here and there. It's like paper cuts on your time and efficiencies. So I'm super interested in what you said. I mean, we were talking about earlier, if there's 10 new matters a month, and that's what the firm does, then it would save about, on average, 15 hours a month based on what you and I talked about. Sure. And you start to put money to that. Even if it's like, let's just say you don't want to attribute any of the attorney time as like, that's what's saved. Although I'm sure attorney time is saved with that. It's just support staff. I mean, depending on where you are and all, let's just say $20 an hour to round it out. That's a lot of money that the firm saves over time, and a lot more ease that everyone feels inside. So I don't know.
Yeah, and like there's one thing is saving of money, but also you can then put those hours towards like talking to clients or like doing some more client acquisition work, so you get more clients in. Right?
Yes.
So like it just makes also the job of some of the firm staff more enjoyable instead of having to like type stuff over. So
absolutely. Definitely. Well, I know earlier. So listeners, if you get whiplash, I'm really sorry. I started to talk to him about this and then we dug in a little more, which I'm super glad we did. But I'm curious just about you as an owner. Do you have any habits that help you as an owner stay the course, do your thing? Like, do you wake up early, for example?
I do, but that's just like my circadian rhythm, I guess. Like I'm usually up at 5, and then I can get
Oh,
something done for
nice.
an hour before like kids start moving around. So like, yeah, I don't have to like, I wake up without an alarm clock for that usually. So like that just happens, so that I'm fortunate in that way, I guess.
Yeah, no, that's
um,
fantastic. I mean, it does help getting a head start on things.
sure.
And then you have an EA, I know,
I do.
executive
Yes.
assistant. How long have you had your executive assistant?
Couple months now. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Slowly started before the summer. So about 5 months or something ago. Yeah.
Have you noticed a shift yet? I would imagine you have, but a shift yet in the time you're getting back?
So I would say that like I'm very self-reliant. Like I built a software company. Like, okay.
Right.
But then like and around Decision Vault, most of anything that's repetitive is already automated, right? So
Uh-huh.
like nobody's sending invoices, like all that's just
Right.
taken care of, like sales tax and like all these things. So like bringing on an executive assistant who then like we're working towards and we're getting close to now is like she owns my calendar and she owns like my inbox, and then she
Yes.
can like she does the first line of defense there. We do have Decision Vault support, right? So she doesn't get into support. We have like a full-time support rep who can answer support questions and like get on
Mhm.
with onboarding calls with folks. So like that's his role. So like there's a dividing line there, but other than that,
Mhm.
like my A kind of like works on the inbox. So it took a little bit because we have little of these like repetitive things that happen like every day, every week. It's
Yeah.
mostly just things come up. Like, what do we do with this email? What do I do with this request?
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's been taking some time, but lately I noticed like I would describe it as like you don't really know what it's like to work with an EA before you work with an EA, right? So like
Yep.
just commit and
Yes.
then do it for a while, because like now that I'm working with her, like I have more of these things throughout the day of like, oh, I could like hand off this or I can hand off that. And like
Yeah.
then you'll start to like notice things and see these patterns. And before
Mhm.
that, like when I was thinking and looking into this in like March, April, 6 months ago, then like I was trying to write down like what do I go have her do, or him, right? I didn't
Yeah.
know, of course, who would be the person yet.
Right.
It's like I don't know, like I don't really see it, but like I'm part of a community of B2B SaaS founders, so like they hammer on this, like
Is this Dan Martell?
yeah, them or tell.
Okay, that's actually what pushed me to get REA was because of his book. And
Right.
his book is so impactful. I know there's a lot of law firm owners that have read it, and so you're in his coaching community for SaaS,
Yes.
it sounds like. Yeah, which
Yes.
is awesome. It's probably really good because it is tough to see up front, like what exactly are they going to be doing? And then, but you just when you have someone that's pushing you to say, like, listen, there's definitely stuff that you're doing that you don't have to do. Get somebody
But
in
it'll just take a little bit of time.
time.
Like I think the
Yes.
advice there is like to start part time. So
Yeah.
that's what I did. And then we started to notice like, hey, part time like doesn't cover the whole day, right? So then I'm
Right.
still back in my inbox at the second half of the day. So the
Yes.
idea was to grow towards full time right about by September. That's now, but like
Yeah.
yeah, there's plenty of stuff that is just
Yeah.
hidden until
Yeah.
you kind of start to get attuned to it and come pick it up, and then
Exactly. No, I'm really glad you said that. And I had someone once tell me who has a lot of experience with an EA and actually a few at this point. Like that's the level that she's at. And she said you need to give it a year as long as it feels like the right fit with the person that's there in the role. It takes time for it to be how you think it should just be humming, or it really does take that time. And so I've thought about that a lot. And it doesn't happen as fast as what I think everybody wants it to. But so it's nice to hear your experience. I mean, you've done it and it is slow, but it is building. And that all feels like
oh,
it's
it
moving in the right
definitely is
direction.
saving time now, right? So like I
Hmm.
like get emails come in to reschedule things, or like so that those things will just get handled. Like we've cleaned up so much of like all the incoming mail, of like unsubscribed a bunch of things.
Yes.
Automatic filters into like the ones that we do for the ones, and maybe also for you. So like I've tried a couple different like ways to like share email, and the tool that we landed on, because most of those, like I don't really want to have her like log into my actual Google account and then be in like 4 Google accounts. It's a little tricky. It's better to kind of have like that, have a barrier there. So there's these tools that let you share email, but most of those are focused at doing like customer support, right? Sharing support at DecisionVault.com, and then have people reply. To make that easy for support, they then tag that conversation to the person replying, which means that if I ever reply to an email, the reply from the other person comes back to me again. So like that's annoying, because you don't want that with working with an EA. So I found a tool called Missive, Missive, and that one has some settings around this where you can say that like, hey, somebody emails me, my EA assigns it to me because I should reply. I reply, and now when the other party does the next reply, it lands back into the email delegation inbox. So like they have some like support articles that show like there's different flavors of how you can set up that tool. That one, so far, we found to work really well. She has one login to that tool, and then in the tool, like my different email accounts are there, so that like she can help with all of them, right? So
very cool. Very cool.
Since we're on this topic, I thought I'll throw that tip in, because
I'm glad you did.
I've cycled through several other tools that work great if you do support email, right?
Yeah.
But like not support email, like most of the things should like keep landing in the shared inbox, where then
no, that's really cool. Yeah, I'm glad you shared that. I'm going to look into that. I'm sure other people will find that useful too. Yeah. And thank you so much for coming on the podcast and sort of indulging. I didn't give you a heads up. I was going to ask you about your personal routines and how you think about things, but I'm glad that people got to hear about DecisionVault. And I think it's always cool to kind of get some insight of the brain behind it, how they think, how they operate. So I really appreciate your time. Everyone,
thanks for having me.
Check out DecisionVault.com. We'll link up everything in the show notes. Yeah. Anything else that you want to say or share before we wrap up?
No, I would say, so like DecisionVault.com, you could start a free trial from there. There's a product tour page where we have a couple of short clips that kind of show like, hey, the client experience, the sync. We didn't talk about the design sheet at all, which like, I'll say something in a moment. I mean, we'll add that one in. So product tour, you can kind of see those different parts. We have an integrations page that lists all our integration. And when you click on each of them, you can kind of see like a 3-minute video of how that works. And then there's a more in-depth, like recorded demo of about half an hour you can like register for and watch on demand. That I kind of go over somewhat of the backstory, but then why it's built and functions like it does. And then there's a quick product demo.
I mean, tell me about the design. What's the design sheet? I know I was about to say goodbye, but what is this?
I just thought about it, like, oh, the other thing. Yeah. So intake, like I talked about it, right? It's sort of, and then if you plug in DecisionVault, it enables other things. So like the client fills in a questionnaire, but then at some point, the attorney will have to sit down with the client to go through like, how are we going to design this plan? And there's a couple different ways. Some attorneys just like do it for memory and sit there and write their notes or like in the meeting. Some have sort of checklists that they fill in, but it's typically too hard to really make some kind of combination of what the client filled in and like the list of questions you want to ask them to make sure that you kind of covered all the angles in determining what the design of the plan is going to be. So in the beginning of DecisionVault, I built out the questionnaire part and the syncing part. And then for a year and a half, my wife kept bothering me saying like, but what about my meetings? Like, I want my design sheet automated. It's like, okay, yes, I see the value of that. So now we did that at the end of last year, and don't start with this. Like start with the questionnaire, with syncing the information, getting familiar with the tool. But this is what you then can do to kind of build on the information, right? So like it functions like a separate section to the questionnaire that is only for firm staff. So you can list out like your different questions of sort of your meeting template. How are you going to have the meeting with the client? But then you can plug in the actual data and things that the client has already answered on the questionnaire in the order of where you need it, right? So like I have the client's names first and maybe a list of their children. And if they have filled any, like a summary of their assets. And then I can start to like have these sections where like you can start to document the design choices. Are we going to do a single trust, like separate trusts? Like what's the name? What's the signing date? Like all these things you don't want to bother the client with in the actual questionnaire. You can capture here, like who are going to be in which exact roles? Like what are we going to do about funding? Like are there some other special things you need to plug in? Yes or no, right? Choices on clauses to include. The idea is to like take a little bit the approach of like the dentist office, right? Where like you sit in the chair, you get like prepped, cleaned, etc. And then at some point, like the dentist will come in and like run through everything for 5-6 minutes, and then we're done. Now, obviously, a design meeting is 2 hours, but it's a similar thing. When you walk out of the design meeting, the filled design sheet, whether it's on paper because you export and printed it, or you've like did a virtual call and it's like used on the screen, like that should be filled in. Like you won't get there in the beginning where you can like then just walk out, right? As you kind of notice, like how do we typically run these meetings? What are the questions we always ask? Like what are some of these questions we typically go back to the client for after the design meeting because we forgot? Like all those things should get plugged in over time into this design sheet so that like it is a sort of process-driven approach where like maybe you have to sit there at the end for like 10-15 minutes to kind of run through it top to bottom again and fill in the missing gaps that you may have missed. But that's it. Then like it should go, probably your audience will have some staff then doing the drafting. But even if they do the drafting themselves, they have the exact inputs that they need. Or if you use like back office drafting or something, right, to do like outsourced drafting, like, so that's the design sheet. That's like sort of the next level that gets enabled by like doing intake through DecisionVault in the first place.
Is that what you meant earlier when you said 1 to 2 hours per matter you would save, but more if you use the tool more deeply? Is this what you were referring to?
Yes, that's one of the things that will start to add up because like that's a little bit of hidden time, right? Like, I had the 2 hours with the clients, but now I'm sitting here for another hour or two, like kind of building their plan or designing it. Like, and between then the context sync, then typically you can apply a scenario in your drafting tool, and then you have like these other choices that are captured. So then all those things together will really streamline your whole drafting process.
Yeah. That's so cool. Okay. I'm glad you thought to say that.
Sure.
That's very cool. Man, yeah. Well, this is probably a perfect place to round out, but I totally appreciate you coming on here. And anytime you feel like there's sort of the next wave or features or something you're really excited about, don't hesitate to reach back out so we can chat again. I would love to stay up to speed. Yeah.
Sounds good.
All right. Thank you, Wouter.
All right. Thank you, Melissa. Have a good rest of your day.
You too.
Hey, you may not know this, but there's a free guide for a process I teach called Monday Map, Friday Wrap. If you go to velocitywork.com, it's all yours. It's about how to plan your time and honor your plans so that week over week, more work that moves the needle is getting done in less time. Go to velocitywork.com to get your free copy. Thank you for listening to the Law Firm Owner Podcast. If you're ready to get clearer on your vision, data, and mindset, then head over to velocitywork.com where you can plug in to quarterly strategic planning with accountability and coaching in between. This is the work that creates velocity.